one other file format that I failed to mention earlier, and is the last one we'll talk about, and that is the .tif or .tiff file format, which is known as TIFF. And TIFFs actually, in a lot of ways, are like the raw file format in the fact that it is a format that is used for professional, high quality printing or photography. And the reason is because it is a file format that the manipulator of the image can choose the amount of compression that is placed on this image. So if you choose no compression, it gives you a very crisp, clear image with no compression and most of the original data intact. And like I said, that is a file format that is used a lot by professional designers and professional print houses. So now we'll get on to, now that we've discussed file formats, we'll talk about how to save your images into these different file formats. So for instance, there are different ways to save your files. The first one is very much like what we already discussed in Lesson 1. With opening files, you go to the File menu, under the main menu bar, and you click Save. In this case, I can't save because it's in a saved state. The other way that you can save it is Save As. And in this case, it's showing that it is a JPEG, but what I can do is that here is a list of all the different file formats that I can save as. So for instance, what I was saying earlier about the 5 more popular file formats, most of them are here. You have the GIF, the GIF format. You have the JPEG format. You have the Photoshop format here. You have the PNG file format, and here is the TIFF format right here. Now what you'll see there is that there wasn't a way to save it as a RAW. RAW file formats are only when you open image documents, because you're originally opening them in a RAW format, and from there you will then save them into different file formats. If you were wanting to save all of the uncompressed image, what you would probably do is save it as a TIFF or a Photoshop document. Any other file format, and you're going to lose some of your information, some of the data from your original photograph by saving it, say, as a JPEG, a PNG, or a GIF. So you can go that route as the Save As. Now, and that is useful for when you're working, say, in print design or photography. But now if you want to save images or imagery for the web, what you would do, you'd go about that a little different way, and you go under File, and you go to Save for Web and Devices. And this is this will bring up a special window that basically optimizes your image and compresses it for web development or web viewing, keeping a lot of the clarity but compressing it down to a file size that is easily handled by the web. Anytime you find images or any kind of stuff that's on the web, it's always very small file size because it has to serve those images from a server and bring it to your computer, which is, seems easy, but actually behind the scenes is a very difficult feat, and therefore keeping file sizes small is particularly a good practice. So as you can see here in our Save for Web and Devices window, Here, this shows you the original Cowboy JPEG image here, and its file size at 5.15 megabytes. Over here, it shows you the optimized image that you're going to save as, and in this case, this is going to save it as a compressed JPEG. And as you can see, it really does a lot of compression. It says it takes it from 5.15 megabytes and converts it or compresses it down to 387.7 kilobytes, which is actually an amazing amount of compression considering most of the imagery, most of the clarity isn't lost. Now, you can control certain options in this Save for Web dialog box that could even compress it more. Say, right now, this is at a preset called JPEG High, and they have other presets in here. Now, let's say you wanted to save it to a preset called JPEG Low, which is going to decrease the clarity or lower the clarity, and you'll see what happens. It is compressed it once again and is now only 97 kilobytes. Quite amazing considering the amount of image crispness that is lost. Hardly any, especially at this size. This is at 100%. You can choose your zoom level here. But now let's go in and let's zoom in to say like 300%. Once you get to 300%, now you can start seeing where some of the clarity of your image is lost. As you can see, a lot of the skin details have been lost and kind of is made up by big blocks of color, and some of the clarity in the eye is lost. So that's where you start seeing the compression start to become a problem. So let's zoom back out to 100%. Now you have other options here. You can also choose, like I said earlier, you can choose GIFs or PNGs because all of them are good for web development or for web viewing. So, and by choosing these different options, you get different compression settings. Here you can see I used a PNG, and it compressed it quite a bit, but definitely not as much as a JPEG would. So, for web and other devices, this is where you would go to save it. So, you have several different ways of saving your documents out of Photoshop. The first would be the save button or the save command, which would simply save your document. Then you have the save as, and then you have the save for web or other devices, which is good for web purposes, for web viewing and web use. Now, if you want to know a little bit about the quick keys, we'll go through that. Save, the simple command save on a Mac is Command S, and that brings up the save, or will save it. If you want to save as, you do, under Windows that would be Control S, and that would save. If you want to save as on a Mac, it's Shift Command S, and that brings up the Save As button, which gives you the opportunity to change the name of the document itself. Let's say if I wanted to save as a copy, I would do Cowboy 2 or something like that. Now on a Windows PC, that would be Shift Control S, and that would do the same thing. That would bring up the dialog box to where you could change certain options or name it different names. And then the last one is the save for web or devices, and that is on a Mac, Shift Option Command S, and that brings up the Save for Web or Devices dialog box. Now, on a Windows PC, that would be Shift, Alt, Control, S, and that would do the same thing. Which makes it, by using quick keys, if you get to learn them, it makes your workflow a little faster, just makes things a little easier. So I would suggest, once you become more comfortable with using Photoshop, to start trying to use your quick keys in situations that'll make your workflow a little faster. So that is the basics of this lesson, lesson 3, on how file formats and how to save out of Photoshop into different file formats. Thanks for watching.